Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant. My name is Lee Reams. I am the founder and CEO of CountingWorks. And today's topic is obviously, probably the thing you've been hearing about everywhere, and you're sick and tired of it. But it is the biggest shift in our industry that we've seen in a few decades, and most firms really haven't wrapped their heads around it yet. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of my view of what AI really is. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm still seeing, I just got an email solicitation this morning, for example, for an AI webinar, right? And it's talking about basically how to write prompts. It doesn't get into what AI really is doing, and it's really not giving you the direction, the profession, kind of where things are going and what you should be doing. So my take and today's topic is AI isn't a tool, it's your next hire. And I want you to start looking at AI as a labor component. It's not just a taskmaster. It's not just sending you, due dates. It's not just rewriting an email for a client. If used correctly, it is actually doing a ton of the heavy lifting when you're actually running your practice. So whether that be on a marketing side, and we'll talk about that, how to use this agent and labor as a way to scale and grow your business, all the way to onboarding, to actually finding signals within your current database that clients that need advisory work, for example. So while everyone is talking about AI, I don't think they're talking about it the right way. A lot of times too, I had a Reddit post about this exact topic, and someone came in and said, hey, the people that are most successful right now are using offshore and AI to get things done faster. And my first thought on that is, that's to get compliance done faster. That's not really talking about where the industry is going and where you should be going with your client base, and that's more into the advisory side. So as usual, Rebekah Barton, our Chief Visibility Officer, is joining me today. So Rebekah, say hello.
Hey, everybody. Looking forward to this one.
So let's start with the beginning here. There's a shortage of accounting help, tax help. The AICPA latest trend reports show that fewer accounting graduates are coming into the pipeline. Obviously, we have this huge boomer retirement wave. So fewer people are even sitting for the CPA exam. There are states like Kentucky are making it easier to qualify to become a CPA or be involved. So there's some movement there. But this is not a temporary problem. NASBA, a bunch of other thought leaders have come out and said, hey, demand from clients isn't slowing down. Even though the doomers are telling you you're all out of business, that's not true at all. You obviously saw it in the last tax season. So what firms are stuck in is a cycle of, we need more people to grow, or I need to start firing clients. We've talked about that in other podcasts. But the people aren't there to hire, right? So then they offshore. And then they realize, oh my God, offshoring isn't as easy as I had hoped. Or if they're hiring domestically, it's like the price tag that comes on. They're hugely expensive, or quite honestly, they don't stay. So the real question becomes, what if growth doesn't come from hiring anymore? And what if it comes from building a firm that doesn't need as many people? That is what my view on the future is. And that is where AI comes in. But not necessarily just as a tool, but as something very different. And what I've even on our own product development teams, like yesterday, we're working on some new tools. And one of the comments I said is, we don't want to give the accountant, the tax pro, more work. Like, meaning we've created a new, let's say, a proposal tool, and it writes a customized one-to-one proposal. That is awesome. But if you don't have enough time to do that in the first place, all you're thinking about is, oh, I got another tool to take more of my time, or an engagement letter, for example. Well, I just don't have time to do an engagement letter. So systems, and where it's not just a tool, are actually doing all this work for you, and all you're doing is coming in and saying, hey, this is correct, I approve, send, and or I'm tweaking it a little bit and I go from there. So that, I think, is what the shift is. And I think that's where firms are getting a lot of this wrong. So Rebekah, kind of give an idea of how you see tax pros and accountants using AI tools. Like, they think it's just a new Google.
Yeah, and it's not. Google and ChatGPT and all the other AI systems, Perplexity, Gemini, whatever your preferred system is, they work very differently. And if you're using it as another form of Google, it's not going to scale. And it's not going to do all of the things that AI can do for you. I know McKinsey did some research on AI adoption across industries, not just with tax and accounting, but within pretty much everything. And many companies are still kind of stuck in experimentation mode. They're just playing with it. They're trying to see what it can do. They don't have systems in place. It's all just kind of one-off, haphazard prompting. Then they'll get something really great, be excited about it, but they don't know how to scale it. They don't know how to implement it on a larger scale to create true systems. So I think they're starting over every time. There's nothing ongoing. There aren't these things in place that are helping them actually automate or use AI as a labor tool, which is what we're really going to get into today. So what you've got to do is create structure, consistency, and that's where you're going to start seeing the leverage that AI can really give you within the tax and accounting industry, and how it can help you elevate yourself above your competitors without losing a personal touch, without losing the relationships that you've really built. Because I think that's another fear people have, is that they're just going to become this AI company. And that's not the case at all. What this is going to do is allow you to automate and to have better systems within your office so that you can continue delivering even better services to your clients on the front end of things.
Yeah, no, it's 100% human in the loop. And Rebekah, as power users like ourselves, we understand that very easily. You can see at times when AI technology can only go so far if you don't have the proper guardrails in, if you don't have the proper security in, which is even a bigger issue. I see people trying to build, a standalone agent, or they're trying to build what they call labor agents because they saw it on a YouTube video. And then they're not even thinking about where is my client data going? Who has access to that client data? Am I even breaking my own rules and engagement, right? There's a lot of different things. And then they also see if they don't have proper guardrails where you don't have consistency in the results. So you need to set these up where you can control the outcomes in a consistent manner. So when I talk about not using AI just as a tool occasionally, I'm talking about, and this is what people think. Well, I'm writing prompts, I'm asking questions, and I'm getting answers. That's not the way I want you to think about AI right now. And maybe the word shouldn't be AI. If we use it as a software tool, if we just said this is an automation tool, I think people would maybe disarm their pushback to it and realize, okay, so let's step back. What job needs to get done every single week, right? So I would feel a growth-minded firm would be marketing, onboarding, ongoing client communication, advisory support. And then my question is, well, how can AI step into those roles? And maybe not perfectly, but enough to remove a huge amount of the work. And let's start with the marketing side. And I'm going to kind of hybrid this with onboarding and some things that we are doing. And we've talked about this before, but on the marketing side, we have utilized AI as a full-on copywriter, website designer, I would say, an IT person to deliver marketing material via social media, whether that be via email. So in the old days, let's think about it. You might have had a small team of people just to do the marketing side of your practice, right? But if now I have 15 or 20 accurate, trusted, targeted blog articles written for me at scale, automatically publishing, automatically being added to my client newsletter, automatically being shared on social media, that is a huge labor component. So whether you would have hired that person or not, AI now enables me to think of AI as labor. I can turn it on, I can put guardrails in, I can teach it. So let's talk about that real quick, Rebekah, on how to get kind of the consistent results. How do you add guardrails to say, my firm tone is X. I like to write Z, and then kind of give it guardrails. I want to target this type of messaging, or I want to create clusters around this type of topic. How do you train it, or how do you give advice to it to make AI act as a trusted labor component?
Yeah, so these LLM systems are smart. That's the first thing to remember. It is going to understand as you train it. And really the best way to train your AI is to use it. Use it as a true assistant. I use mine. I know, Lee, you use yours hours and hours a day. There are probably days that I'm in AI doing some kind of task for 10 hours, letting it help me, do various things for work. So I think the biggest thing that you can do is literally speak to it like you would an assistant. If you want things done a certain way, say, you want it done a certain way. If you want things to be written in a specific tone, tell it that. Upload samples of your writing. Upload samples of emails you've written. Upload samples of blog posts you've written. Upload samples of any interviews you've done. All these kinds of things will help it understand who you are, help it understand your tone, the kinds of words you use, the syntax you use. The more you train it, the more back information you give your AI, the more it's going to understand about you. Just like when you get to know a new person or you hire a human assistant, it's going to take them some time to dive into everything that you've done before and really understand who the firm is, who you are as a firm owner. Do the exact same thing with your AI system. And also give it positive feedback. I found that when I tell mine things like, that was great, repeat that in the future, it really does. And it remembers those pieces of praise and exactly the types of things you want. So I think that's something a lot of people skip, is they just move on to the next task and they don't actually tell the system, hey, do this again next time or keep this format next time. That's how I build a lot of repeatable processes within my workflows, is just consistently telling it what I like and what I don't and where to make these changes. And then it does make those changes moving forward.
Yeah, I'm going to continue on with some more labor examples of, again, not just a tool, but actually doing things. So we have a prospecting agent, for example. So I can tell the prospecting agent, hey, I want to target restaurant owners in San Francisco that have revenue between $500,000 and $10 million. And I want to offer CFO advisory, full turnkey services to these restaurants. Our prospecting agent will go out, find the target audience. It will scrape the web and basically enrich the data and actually create almost a narrative about that person. So that when it starts outbound cadence to this prospect, it's actually speaking exactly, personalizing every single email. So instead of sending 400 emails of the exact same thing, every email will be personalized to that specific firm. It will then write blog articles about it. It will write FAQ articles about it. These are things that will help you rank better in search. It will help you rank better inside ChatGPT. When someone is looking for, I'm looking for a CFO for my restaurant business, this will now surface your practice inside. That is a labor agent. The old days that was a sales development person. You had, like a HubSpot person. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars. We've created it now where it's a couple $100 a month or $100 a month, whatever it is, right? So that is labor on the onboarding side. And this is kind of a cross between marketing and onboarding. We have now surfaced an agent that sits inside your blog articles. And this is something we haven't released yet, but it's coming. But basically, it will say, hey, do you have more questions about this topic? The old days, it's a static blog. Maybe they reached out to you, maybe they asked a question, maybe you had some call to action. This time now, it takes the conversation and actually evolves it. And the whole idea with every tool that we build is to have the human in the loop be a part of the conversation. So it teaches, it shares knowledge, it doesn't do a DIY type of advice giving, I would say. It's more of, hey, okay, here's some more answers, here's some more questions about it. And all this information then is loaded inside of your portal as a lead. And now that lead, you have all this documentation, exactly what they're looking for. This is like one-to-one advisory, surfacing one-to-one advisory. So these are the ways that I'm talking about. In onboarding, it's super simple. If you can figure out a way that every client gets almost a custom task, based on what you are, because we know, so we've enriched the client data. We're scraping all the client data from your tax returns, the financial statements, and now we're able to surface, hey, this client needs this to-do list. These are the documents that you should upload and automatically request them. By the time you're logging in, you're just logging into a dashboard that says, hey, Lee, here's 6 clients ready to go to step 2. Please review where they are. These clients are or lagging or whatever. And then you can create game plans for it. So that's another form of labor. Another option is in a dashboard, for example. You log in every day. It tells you exactly what's going on in your entire client database. Here's your 6 appointments. Here's the 10 clients that have inquired about a question. Your AI, your labor, already wrote the responses. It knows the tax research. It knows the tax code. It already speaks in your tone. They're just ready for you to review. So that's what I mean by labor and setting up certain roles. So if you start breaking down your practice, you almost can be where you're an admin, or maybe your admin is an admin of all these AI laborers. So it's not necessarily perfect. There is human in the loop. We've already said that. But I would say, does it double you, triple you, quadruple you? Does it mean you don't have to hire as many admin people? Maybe not as much seasonality. Maybe you don't need people off season. 100%. So one of the things that I am seeing though is I'm going to call it a tool stacking problem. So this is where firms get in trouble. They go out and they sign up or they create their own little agents. I've seen quite a few DIYers lately that have built absolute just disgusting websites. They've built like the workflows that barely operate. They're like rubber banded together, but they saw online or a media, an influencer saying, you can do this and that. And the reality is they're all disconnected. I don't know what the security is. They don't perform well because AI is not able yet to be like people all talk about vibe coding. Yeah, I can create incredible comps. I have a really hard time creating a code base overnight talking to it. Okay. Is it possible? Maybe, but you have IT people spending a ton of time and they're developers and programmers. So what you end up having is you have one tool that you use for your blog, another one for your email. So there's a new tool out that I've seen that will write responses for your Gmail. Well, first of all, if you're an accountant and you're using, and they're targeting accountants, I'm like, what accountant is responding to clients via email when they're asking personal financial questions? So then the first problem your question is what kind of vendor doesn't even understand my business, right? But my point is that you have multiple tools, none of them talk together. And I think that becomes even a bigger cluster than you already had. So they might generate ideas, they may generate drafts, but they don't actually execute. And there's a stat from Gartner that says knowledge workers are already overwhelmed by the number of tools and notifications they deal with daily. And one of the things even we found when we were developing our software is I felt we were overwhelming, even the words urgent, ASAP, and we're sourcing all this new information, but it felt like to an accountant's point of view, it's like, oh my God, AI is making my life even worse, not necessarily better. So you don't want 10 AI tools sending you notifications. You want one system that actually works together and is doing and delivering work. So, Rebekah, why is that such a big difference?
Well, most tools are going to create more decisions for you, right? Do I like this? Should I change this? Do I need to rewrite this? Do I need to prompt this again? So instead of actually saving time and building systems, you're just managing outputs all day, which isn't actually saving you time, right? It's just changing how you're filling your time, but you're still wasting the same amount of time on busy work and repeatable tasks that could be automated. So the goal should be to have the AI system draft the email, build the proposal, prep the response for you, and have it sitting there for you when you walk into your office in the morning. You sit down at your computer, everything is set to go. All you have to do is review and then divide and conquer, like you were just talking about, Lee, right? Whether that's sending the emails that are already prepped or delivering things to your admin so that they can handle it. Everything's done for you on the back end. And that's the big difference. You sitting in an AI module all day long, tweaking prompts, tweaking outputs is not really resolving the problem of you wasting your time doing repeatable tasks, right? So you need to find a system that works together, that works cohesively. I've actually talked to some clients recently who are like, well, we're going to still use this for our CRM and we're going to have it bridge with this tool. And it's just like, no. You need one thing, one system. So I think it is a big problem because it's something that I've been seeing, and people just don't understand how a single system can just do things for them in a cohesive fashion, as opposed to piecemealing this kind of gigantic AI tech stack that is going to become a huge problem within a week. And you're going to just be so confused by all the different things you have going on that it is, like you just said, going to make things worse instead of better, which is absolutely not the goal here.
Yeah, so let's just keep it on the same theme about AI as labor. So the example of what Rebekah talked about, let's say it's busy tax season. Overnight you get, or let's say over the weekend, you get 10 or 15 client inquiries. They go through your secure client CRM. Hopefully they're not sending it to your Gmail. And an AI labor tool should be able to do all the research, write that response. And then all you're doing is when you come in the morning and log in on Monday, your dashboard should say, hey, review the 10 responses to your client hub. And then 3 of those responses were they wanted to change their appointments and the AI automatically found them a new appointment, right? That is true labor. And I think that's really important. So that's just another example. Perhaps it's surfacing advisory opportunities for you because it knows the background of each client. All you're doing then is saying, hey, do I want to send that proposal for advisory because it says this person just hired 8 people? They are a prime example of someone who should be doing CFO advisory services. Here's the proposal already written for you. Do you want to change the pricing? Do you want to change the service? Do I want to send it at all? So that's the way it really starts working as a labor side. So we had mentioned security, and I think that's something that does not get talked about enough. And we see it too often where pros are very loose with their security. Two-factor authentication. It's too much, too cumbersome for me. There's a reason you're dealing with their most, you have your social security numbers, you have their financials, you have their, you have your tax returns. That really concerns me. And if you're putting your client data in public AI tools, tax info, financial, social security numbers, personal details, that's a big issue, and it's not secure. And then that's what I'm also seeing is, like OpenClaw and these tools, you're putting all these different tools together. I don't even know if you're actually, breaking the rules of each software product, probably their service agreements. But the reality is now you're sharing data all over the place. I think that is a big issue on a profession built on trust. So I just want to tell people, be careful before you jump in to, it's kind of like the Wild West, but if AI isn't built in a secure system, it's not just inefficient, it becomes a liability. And most firms don't even realize where the data is going. They're not even following, they're not even thinking about it. But I think it's a big issue. So let's go into a area that we're into, and the growth-minded accountant talks about a lot, and that's going to be AI marketing tools, and more importantly, utilizing what the ChatGPTs, the Perplexities, the Claudes are doing right now, what Gemini is doing, and what's changing right now, Rebekah, in that side, and what are you seeing happen? I think search has become an AI driven, but kind of explain that, and then we'll kind of get into, if you can, go into, again, a few more things of how labor AI can do these tasks that they couldn't before.
Yeah, so search is definitely changing and it's definitely becoming AI driven. This is probably what's changing the fastest, actually, because you have all of these search algorithms that have completely shifted within the past 12 to 24 months, really. I like to say now I relearn my job a couple times a year as the algorithms change and as AI becomes more and more important. And I love that. Like I'm a nerd about this stuff and I enjoy it so much. But I think with search becoming AI driven, it's really changed how people need to view what they're putting out into the internet. No longer is keyword stuffing a thing. It doesn't matter if your website says, 5 times tax preparation in Las Vegas or whatever the situation may be. What matters is the story you're telling and naturally geolocating yourself and telling a cohesive narrative across the internet. And this is something we've talked about a lot. But I think firms are really beginning to realize that just having a website isn't enough anymore. In my field, we call it having a web footprint, building a full web footprint. You don't just want a website. You don't just want a Facebook page. You don't just want an Instagram. You want to be feeding all of these different platforms because that's what's going to help build authority for you around the web. Blogging is going to help build authority for you around the web. Writing articles on third-party websites like TaxBuzz, Medium, these different kinds of places. You can put different content on different websites, but as long as it's cohesive, that's what's really going to matter. Niching yourself down. Google has even said themselves in Search Central that they are prioritizing helpful content that is people first, people driven. What are the questions people are actually asking? Answer those in your content. You can use AI to help you research this. Having FAQ pages is huge now. Each of these points I'm making could really be its own podcast, so I feel like we're kind of flying through it for the sake of time. But this is a really important part of the puzzle here as far as ranking within AI and also with using AI as labor. So on the back end of things, you're probably thinking, how am I going to have time to build out all of this content, right? Like maybe it's important, but actually getting from the ideology of it's important to having physical deliverables that you can put out onto the internet feels overwhelming. That's where AI as labor can really help you. And I think this is the thing we don't talk about as much here, is how to utilize that. So you can build out systems that will help you create social media posts for a month, that will help you use something you've written, say a long form blog post, and break it down into pieces of media that you can just automatically post for every different platform. You can turn points you've made in a blog into social media captions. You can turn them into reels, into scripts for YouTube. So there's kind of this way to use AI that I like to talk to people about, where you can take a single piece of content and have AI break it down for you into something that may last you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. And then you have this cohesive content that's already built for you. Graphics can be built for you. Your entire social media marketing system can really be automated with an AI. And the same goes for blogging. You can build content clusters, and then you can take those and break them down. So I think using AI as kind of a marketing assistant is something that is very possible and maybe feels a little bit like a pipe dream to people. But if you can dedicate maybe 30 to 60 minutes a month, honestly, to just really being in your AI system, you can get all of the deliverables you need from a marketing perspective for an entire month. And then email would be another area where it can write out email campaigns. It can create niched down campaigns for different segments of your clientele. All of that is going to be able to be automated, or at least heavily automated, if not fully, within your AI system.
Right. And we're talking about labor, and we obviously have our playbooks that are doing exactly what you're talking about. And let's just talk, what is the labor that would have gone into that before? You have probably a marketing and advertising type firm or mind. You have then a copywriter, probably a specialized copywriter, especially if you're talking about the tax code. Then you have someone who's going to select the images, create the graphics. Then you have another person who's going to then publish the article and the blog article. So AI tools, things that we have built, that we've had this tool out for a year, could do this at scale. Personalize it. That's the thing. The personalization at scale is the beauty. So it's not just generic. You went in and wrote a prompt to say, write me an article about a 529 plan. No, it's going to go much deeper into the area that you serve, the geography, perhaps some landmarks that it will mention. It will talk about the personality of your firm. There's so many things that it can add. And if it's doing one-to-one emails, so meaning if you're sending emails to your current client base, maybe it's trying to upsell them to tax advisory from just being a compliance client. It is smart enough to use all the information and context it has about that particular client and then craft an email that is particular to that individual client, one-to-one, right? And that is huge. So, what would that have cost in the old days? We used to say, if you hired everyone as contractors, you're talking $30, $40, $50,000 a year, easy. So this is one of the things, though, that accountants probably weren't doing that in the past. Only the more successful firms were. And this is the great equalizer. And this is why I think this topic is so important, is firms of all sizes now have access to these tools. We're selling them in small subscription, monthly subscriptions. So it's like, if you start thinking, okay, I can now supercharge my firm, my capabilities by a small investment versus what I was paying in labor. I mean, it's night and day. So once you start thinking that way, once you start doing the shift, I mean, you're already seeing it in the code writing. They're thinking in tokens. So one developer now has a developer cost, and then they have a token cost. But guess what? That one developer is doing 5 times what they were doing, 10 times what they were doing previously. So, I mean, the net cost output is hugely amplified. And more importantly, the cost is way down. So, which circles back to what I think everyone cares about, and that's time. And AI saves time, but that's not necessarily the goal. If AI gives you back 10 hours a week, that's not just efficiency, that is capacity for people that want to grow, capacity to actually do higher value work and really go into the advisory side of things. And some of the tools that we're doing now will not only find advisory opportunities within your current client database, but also then craft the upsell campaigns to those clients, and then actually basically serve up what that compliance, from compliance, I mean, to advisory, what that advisory report, for example, or that advice, the strategies actually looks like. So AI doesn't make you just more efficient. It makes you more valuable to your client base, right? You're delivering better financial outcomes if you use it right. And that's, I think, a big deal. So let's go into the idea that your first AI hire, you know, okay, well, that makes sense. Where do I start? And I would say keep it simple and map your practice out into these areas that I've been talking about. So marketing, what do I need assistance in? What can I use AI labor to amplify? Maybe there's an area that you never thought you could afford to do before, but you can now. A small monthly fee could give you what may have cost you $100,000 a year before. Onboarding, everything from collecting data, even scheduling appointments, rescheduling appointments, reminding clients who are still missing information, prodding them automatically. The system works in the background. So then it tells you, okay, this client is ready now for the human in the loop review. Okay. Client communication. What is that? That's not just like a newsletter. That's not just social media. Client communication, where you have an AI assistant write those initial drafts of responses, right? There's a number, even just having some sort of response back to the client when they send something in, saying, hey, setting expectations. It's busy season. Hey, Lee, and it's not just a normal response. This is a personalized, it feels very human. Okay. And then more importantly, delivery. How do we make the delivery of our product a more professional, perhaps? Easier for the client to go through and review and be a part of it, easier for them to pay you, maybe easier for them to approve, easier for you to get the data back to say, okay, now it's time to file a tax return. So, what I'm thinking is, where am I spending time that doesn't require my expertise? Think about that. So those are the menial, tedious tasks. That's your first AI hire. Not everything at once, just one role, one function, and see how it works, right? And once you get it, once you start this thing, you're going to feel, I think, almost less frantic. You feel more powerful. I feel for sure. And let's just talk about some of the things that I've been doing. I used to have a huge marketing department. And we can do, I'm going to say 20, 30 times the output that we could do when we had 5 or 6 people running this before. It's incredible. And the quality is much better. And it makes us much more efficient. But more importantly, it creates the expertise, and how do you explain this, Rebekah, where you have a vision, let's say, as a firm owner, or you have a definite point of view of what you want to talk about. You're an expert, but then you assign it to another person who then has another person helping them out. They don't have the expertise, perhaps, in creating that type of content, and it gets washed down. By the end of the day, you as the expert are doing all the work. So I see that all the time.
Yeah, I think that happens all the time when you're working with anyone, right? Because you are the one who ultimately has to come back in and do things. And I think that's where a lot of firm owners get burnt out. And it's actually somewhere AI can help a lot, because if you train it properly and you train it on your expertise, then it becomes effectively an extension of you. And I know, Lee, you and I both use our AIs that way. We have taught them very well what we know about our specific industries and knowledge bases. And now the outputs are such that we're not having to do perhaps as much cleanup work as we necessarily would, even with using like human assistants or a whole staff of marketing agents. It kind of eliminates that bottleneck and that middleman of having, hey, I've got a huge team to do this. Now you've just got one AI labor agent that you are training on your own expertise. And I think it just makes things a lot cleaner, a lot more efficient. And it's something that far too few tax and accounting professionals are taking advantage of, which is kind of the whole point of this podcast, is that you can use AI this way and you can really help it. It can assist you in creating those systems that maybe you've been lacking or that you found in the past to be inefficient or clunky.
Yeah, and I'm going to give one last example and I'll kind of wrap this up. But so one thing we've seen as well is the idea of using a tool, again, as labor, to do kind of the interview process, but start making it, I'm not talking about the intake, but start making it dynamic. So meaning the old days, everyone, a certain group of clients, you all got the same template, same type of questions. In the AI world, the client's intake experience, the questions being asked, the data being collected, you used to have a human sit down who's smart enough to go, I asked this question based on this, I do this. On a system, the old way of a process, it's set. You don't get that. It's the same intake form, the same questionnaire for every client. We've developed tools that dynamically will change the questions that it's going to source from your clients. And it's almost like a pre-interview process. And this will help you create offer the best strategies, the best ways to deal with this, and more importantly, educate your clients on new opportunities for advisory. That is a labor component. So if I now can have my AI tools having these conversations with my clients in a very professional, polished way, when the data finally gets to me for when I'm starting to do my work, I probably cut out an hour and a half, or more important, I wasn't doing it well enough. I'm going to do a better job because I have more insight about my client, more personalized insight than I ever did. So, the way I look at this, the firms that win over the next few years aren't the ones that adopt the most tools. They're the ones that are going to build the smartest systems. I think there's a lot of catch up out there right now. The good news is, unlike the webinar that I was sent yesterday or actually this morning, that felt like it was built for 2 years ago, AI discussions. There are firms like BDO that are talking about, hey, there's AI powered firms. They were AI first firms, and this is what they look like. And I think if you start thinking that way, you're basically building AI powered teams. So humans, and then you have your agents doing the work. You are basically managing the outputs, managing the decision trees. That is where a lot of the work that you would not have done. You wouldn't have gone through all this data. You would not have been able to have this much input into creating strategies than you ever did before. Okay. And what happens is most of this work is done for you while you're sleeping. I gave you that example of I had 10 inbound client questions into my hub. The AI or Max, our tool, would have written, research, responded. You could set it up. We're not setting it up yet. It just sends. We still have please review, but at some point I think you're going to trust it to send. But I think that is huge savings, right? If you were doing that in the old days, or I guess call it the old days, you might have a tax researcher that has to analyze things. They have to then articulate and write the answers. They have to reference it. This would take hours per response. And that's why pros get bogged down in the busy work, right? So I think it's really important to start looking at this in a different way. And again, don't ask what tool I should use. It's what role I need in my firm that AI can do it first, and even probably better. So that wraps up this edition of the Growth Minded Accountant podcast. Hopefully we've driven in AI is labor. AI is labor. Don't think of it as purely a chat bot. Okay. Think of it as actually doing things that you do today more efficiently. Maybe they're doing 85, 90% of it. I'm not saying it's delivering things on its own. That's not my mindset at all. I think it's just a tool to do most of the research, and think of it as just if you had an army of assistants. And now for each thing that you think about, okay, what can AI do first that I'm not currently doing? That's how you start developing your tech stack. So thanks again for being a listener to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast. We will continue talking about best practices, ways to survive, and to be very successful in the AI age. So until next time, I'm sure you're all still, I've heard a lot of people on I heard a 6-week Disney cruise. That was one of our subscribers. I'm like, 6 weeks on a Disney cruise, that's crazy. But hopefully you're all enjoying your time off and kind of getting refreshed and getting ready for next season. So again, thank you.